Our insider Ken Rosenthal joins us right now. Ken, great to see you. You got a big rowdy party here. Actually, Rowdy Tellez joining us later. But who's your NL MVP?
Well, the good news is we don't have to pick today. But the way I see it right now, there are two guys in the running. They're both great contenders. You cannot go wrong picking either one of them. I'm talking, of course, about Acuna Jr. and Mookie Betts. And I wrote a little bit about this today in the windup. Whoa, who's your choice, AJ?
Freddie.
Who do you got?
Freddie.
Really?
Freddie's a good choice too, but I don't know that he's as dynamic or as impactful as either of the guys I just mentioned. Freddie and Matt Olson certainly are in this conversation, and they are worthy of consideration. But at the same time, Mookie Betts is having a crazy run here this last month or so, and Acuna Jr. all season long. And what Acuna Jr. does that separates him, in my opinion, and I'll get into Mookie in a minute, is the historic nature of his season. When he gets to this 30 home runs, 60 stolen base plateau, and he's only one homer away, he'll be the first player in history ever to do that. He's on a pace with runs scored and stolen bases that only Ty Cobb has done in Major League history. And he's done it for the best team in the majors leading off. Mookie, of course, also a leadoff hitter, also dynamic. And the thing that Mookie has over Acuna is a lead, not an insignificant lead in wins above replacement, however you want to measure it. OPS, his is higher. And Mookie, of course, is, by the metrics, the better defender. And, of course, what he does also is play three different positions, or has played three different positions this season: second base, shortstop, and his usual brilliant right field. So from that perspective, to me, it's those two guys. Go ahead, AJ, fire away.
No, I didn't know if you were going to go Freddie or Mookie. Listen, Mookie's having a great year. Acuna probably is going to win it. Yeah, I think you're right on those two, and I love Mookie, and I love Ronald, and I love Freddie, and Matt Olson's great. But Acuna's going to win unless he gets hurt.
What's amazing is Matt Olson leads the National League in home runs and RBIs, even though he hasn't hit a home run in 56 plate appearances, and yet he is not a principal part of this conversation. Freddie, 50 doubles. That's a Los Angeles Dodgers franchise record. He's second in the league in on base to Acuna, and yet he is not prominent in this conversation. And keep in mind, first basemen, even though Goldschmidt won last year, have a little bit of an uphill battle because their position is not quite as important. To me, as I wrote today, in any other year, any of these guys would be a pretty clear front runner, and we have four of them.
Ken, question for you, because I don't want to diminish Acuna or anyone when I ask this. How much are you noticing stolen bases being up because of the rule changes? And because I don't want to take away 30 and 60 is unheard of, like you're saying, in this league. And but is that some of that a product of the rule changes and the increased base stealing from players around the league?
Jason, that's a great point. And it's undeniable that you have to grade that on a little bit of a curve. At the same time, Acuna leads the majors. So he's the best at doing this. And that needs to be taken into consideration as well. So it's not as if he's simply taking advantage of the rules as it is everyone else. And that's why he's going to become the first player in history to make this incredible milestone. It's because he's done it at the highest level, higher than anyone else. So it's a good point. I appreciate the point. But at the same time, I still acknowledge what he's doing and really admire it. It's impressive. Really impressive.
Ken, we talked about this on the air on Saturday in our Twins-Rangers game. You're talking about NL MVP. I asked you the question, is it possible for someone to swipe in and steal Ohtani's AL MVP? Is it possible? I know you're going to say no, but I think you're wrong.
Well, AJ, I started to answer on Saturday, but then Ezekiel Duran made that dumb base running play to third base, and I uttered about 2 sentences. So at least now I can explain myself a little bit. Ohtani, over 5 months, is clearly the MVP. We know that. And your question was a really good one. Can Julio Rodriguez, who is having an incredible run with the Mariners, maybe get in there and steal it? And my answer was, before this play occurred, if Ohtani continues playing, and he's certainly playing right now, and it looks like he'll play a little bit more at least before deciding how to treat that torn UCL, if he continues playing, it's pretty obvious. Now, if he stops playing, let's say next week, and Rodriguez goes crazy, continues to go crazy, and they get in, It's a conversation, but it seems to me that Ohtani would still rate the edge because of what he has done as a pitcher, as a hitter, as a base runner. Everything he does is brilliant. So I still see him being the guy, but now there is an opening at least to discuss this if he does not finish the season.
You talked about in your one article about how Jeremy Reed, his old hitting coach, said it might affect Ohtani not pitching next year. And then you brought up other things about his rehab. Did he say anything else that would lead you to believe like Ohtani may not hit as well next year if he does get Tommy John surgery or, he's not pitching?
Well, it's interesting, Eric. This conversation began with Jeremy a couple of years ago, 21. And he said at the time that Ohtani thrives as both a pitcher and a hitter. And I remember John Smoltz had said on our air in a broadcast, he thought that if Ohtani just focused solely on pitching, he could be another Jacob deGrom. And that's high praise at the time, obviously, even now. But Jeremy Reed's point was he's better when he's doing both because that way he doesn't get too into the weeds on either one. He doesn't get too obsessive about what he's doing in either particular skill because he has to do both. He has to keep moving before games to prepare himself in both ways. So I called Jeremy Reed back the other day to ask him, okay, we're looking at a situation now where he might need to be a hitter only for a period of time, maybe even for a lengthy period of time, maybe even for the rest of his career. And what Jeremy Reed said was interesting. He said Ohtani has grown as a player and is so much more mature now. Not that he was immature before, but he's become more experienced. I guess that's the better way to put it. And he didn't think it would be as big a problem. He thought the rehab from whatever he is going to undergo, whether it's surgery or a straight rehab, that would be the distraction Ohtani needs. Now, it's still a real question what's going to happen here, what decision he's going to make. And I point back to something the Athletics' Evan Drellick wrote, I guess it was last week, in which he quoted doctors as saying, if Ohtani wants to pitch again at the highest level and he undergoes a second Tommy John, a revision, the best way to do that would be to stop hitting entirely, devote himself entirely to the rehabilitation next year, and then come out in 2025 and do both. Whether that happens, I have strong doubts about. Remember the last time Ohtani came back and hit pretty soon after the surgery, in the following May after having the surgery in October. So it's all a mystery right now. We don't know what he's going to decide. We don't know where this is headed. But the fact that we talk about this kind of thing with this player, it's just so unusual even to think about it. And again, it comes back to the fact that he is so good at both.
And Ken, there was drama this weekend too, and fittingly, the Angels were at Citi Field, so you're going to get the added fun of the New York media where they felt like they needed to clarify what led up to that injury. What was your take on that situation where the Angels wanted to come out publicly and say, hold up, he didn't want imaging done? And Kratz yesterday said on the show, like, hey, maybe a player doesn't want to give all his medicals all the time. So I don't know if you thought they were maybe covering for anyone or also trying to say, like, we take care of our pitchers. He wouldn't let us test him.
My initial reaction was maybe they were covering, but then I made a few phone calls and I asked some questions, and the answers I got were essentially that Ohtani at the time did not feel that an MRI was warranted, and his agent, Nez Balelo of CAA, did not feel an MRI was warranted. The Angels did offer him that possibility, and what Eric said, I learned, and I did not know this, is absolutely accurate. A player doesn't necessarily want an MRI in his file as he goes to become a free agent. They want a clean bill of health if possible. And when Perry Manassian came out and said that as the Angels GM, I also wondered, okay, why is he saying that? Is there a rift with the Ohtani camp? And the truth is they communicate on everything pretty much. He cleared with that camp, with Balelo and Ohtani presumably, what he was going to say. Not that he had to clear it, but he informed them what he was going to say, and they had no objection, evidently, because they didn't come out and say anything different. So here's a guy that did not feel that the MRI was necessary. It was a finger problem, then it was a cramping problem in his legs. And from everything we can tell right now, it does appear he blew out in that game. Just throwing 95 in the first inning. And I was told that you cannot throw 95 with a torn UCL. So it seems that everything was on the up and up. What happened was Perry Manassian was getting criticism because they hadn't given him an MRI, criticism from various people, and he felt his need to defend himself, and he did.
Ken, it's not so much as a question as I just want to follow up on what Eric said earlier, that to give people a little glimpse into the business side of the MLB with players, where the MRI that you don't want it on your record, a lot of players kind of fight that having too much information about them. So when the teams come to them and they want to wear these stress indicators or how much they're sweating or whether they've lost just a little bit of step so they can improve, if there's record of you showing that you're losing a little step, players know teams will take that into arbitration. They will take that into contract negotiations. They will use that against them. So while it's useful information to have, a lot of players kind of fight back where they don't want to see it or to have that on them because more times than not, it's going to be used against them than for them.
No, I'm glad both of you guys made that point because you've been there. And again, as someone who's covered this league for, 35 plus years, I did not know this. I did not know that players might resist an MRI if they felt it was borderline because as a potential free agent, they would want their record clean. And that's important to know. And all the fans and all the people in the media, those people who are screaming about this, well, maybe next time they won't scream as loud knowing what they know. And again, there was not an indication of an elbow problem before this all went down. There were other things going on with him. He was fatigued. Well, of course he's going to be fatigued. He's doing something no one else has ever done. He started doing it in March with the WBC, and I'm not blaming the WBC either, but there were all these things that occurred, and at the time, there was not an arm issue. So when the arm issue arose, okay, of course it's natural to ask the question, what did you guys know and when did you know it? But it seems like from everything we know, this was on the up and up.
That's good info. Okay. Also enjoyed reading about your work with the covering the Twins in the past week. So two interesting portions. I'll start with the most interesting to me was your conversation with Max Kepler about what changed for him in the second half of the season and that it was more of this team related answer. So yes, positive. And I know you'll touch on this news on what's changed with the Twins, but do you also look back at the first half? Like what was going on? Was there a lot of selfish baseball being played?
I didn't take it that way when I talked to Kepler, and he did have some really interesting things to say. Frankly, things I've never heard from a player before. Generally, when you ask a player, hey, what turned it around? He'll point to a mechanical adjustment, maybe a mental reset, all kinds of individual things that might change, help with a coach or work with a coach, all kinds of things. In his case, he said, I'm not really going to take individual credit here. It was the team. It was the team coming together in the second half, supporting each other, communicating better than they had in the first half. And I, as a player, thrive off of that. I like when I can help guys. I like when guys can help me. I feel that vibe, and it elevates me. Now, it wasn't that he was critical of the way the team was in the first half. It's just that he felt they had reached a new place as a team, chemistry-wise, in the second half. Maybe they just determined as one organically, hey, we're going to pull together here. We're going to do it in a little bit better way than we did before. And again, it was just interesting to me that he did not really take individual credit. He credited the team with his own individual turnaround. It was kind of refreshing to hear, different to hear for sure. And I would have gotten this on the air on Saturday, but AJ talks a lot.
Okay. Because I had already said I'm going to follow this. You did all your work on the Twins last week. You're too good to do the Twins and Rangers again with me this week. So, I mean, it's weird how, I talk too
You
much.
need space to speak.
I let him.
Actually,
he
the
wants to do
game
3
was,
innings. I let him go. He can talk all he wants.
Don't backpedal, Ken.
In all seriousness, that game, this happens sometimes in my job. Every time I was planning to open my mouth, something would happen. A guy hit triple, whatever was going on, and it was just odds were working against me.
Or the Rangers had bad
thing.
The Rangers had bad base running. I mean, there was a whole slew of things that happened in that game.
Yeah, there were.
Mostly all negative for the Rangers. I was like, gosh.
True.
But
now about the Twins, guys, I'm just going to say about the Twins, I don't know if AJ agrees with me after watching them this weekend. He's seen them probably a little bit more than I have this year. it seems to me they're set up better than they have been in the past to maybe win a postseason series, end that streak of 18 consecutive playoff losses, going back to AJ's days with the team. They have a top three in their rotation of Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan, and Pablo Lopez. That is quite good. They have the ability in the postseason to put Kenta Maeda in the bullpen, possibility of Chris Paddock coming back, Alcala coming back. And their offense right now is one of the top offenses, has been in the second half in the major leagues. They have a lot of interchangeable parts. They have guys who have stepped up, like Kepler, who were not necessarily performing that way in the first half and who have basically helped the team perform at this level without Correa and Buxton being normal Correa and Buxton. So the young kids, Wallner and Eduardo Julian, a number of others, some bench players as well. AJ mentioned this on the broadcast. I just kind of like what I see. And I don't know, maybe they can't beat the Astros or the Rangers or the Rays, whoever they're going to face. But it seems to me they have a better shot.
Listen, I agree with you. I was going to bring that up to you. I think the Twins, and we talked about this on the broadcast from Saturday, and it'll come up this Saturday. Not only do the Twins have a better team than they've had in the past, they don't have to play the Yankees, who just annihilate them in the postseason every year, right? But there's top three pitching. You throw Gray, you throw Pablo Lopez out there, right? I mean, those are two top flight, really good starters. Maeda in the bull. You mentioned it all, right? The thing for me is the American League doesn't seem as strong. Now, people can argue and say whatever, but in the first round, they're likely looking at not Baltimore, okay, probably, and then not
the AL West winner.
Not the AL West winner, right? Whoever that is. So you're going to get Astros, Rangers, whoever the other wild card is, right? It's going to be okay. It's going to be maybe the Blue Jays. I like their chances against all those teams, not only to win a game, but to win a series because of their big three at the top. And because I think, like you said, if Rocco Baldelli was talking about Patton coming back, or, what's his name? Paddock coming back.
Paddock, yep.
And,
they're excited about him.
They are. And he said he looks amazing. He was talking about it to us on Saturday. I mean, I love their chances because they're swinging the bat and they're playing a different game. Yes, they have to hit home runs, but they're playing a different game than Twins teams in the past. And it's fun it was fun to watch on Saturday. I'll get to see him again this Saturday, but it's a fun game to watch. It's kind of like the old school Twins. Pitching, defense, some timely hitting, and occasional home runs. And I think Rocco has them trending in the right direction.
The one team that I believe we're all underestimating here is Houston. Their offense in the second half has been the best in the majors, I believe, statistically. You saw it last night, Altuve with the cycle, Yordan Alvarez 4 hits. Their bullpen worries me. Their rotation worries me, frankly. It's Verlander. It's an inconsistent Framber Valdez. It's a Christian Javier who is not the same. And yet, we know this, guys. They've done this for a long time now. And they have that ability, that know-how, whatever you want to call it. And while their pitching is not quite the same, they are still a team we cannot forget about and dismiss easily, for sure.
So, Ken, one more on the Twins, because the other layer of what you wrote about in your notes, I had a follow-up question for you on Correa. It was great insight on how he dealt with plantar fasciitis, and he said, and he's always candid, especially lately, he came back earlier than he would have if he had his free agent season going on right now. So what was your take on the honesty of those comments, both to say, hey, if I was in a different spot, it's a little bit more about me and making sure my numbers are good. At the same time, he's like, my presence is needed here. But I always wonder about that threshold with players, like your presence and coming back too soon versus your production. If you're not playing well, you're not helpful for the team either.
There's always a balance, Scott. And I covered Cal Ripken Jr. for a long time. And when he wasn't hitting and the streak was going on, he would always say, I can contribute to my team in other ways. And his managers would always say they wanted him out at shortstop because he was basically going to play a brilliant shortstop. Not a rangy shortstop necessarily, but he'd get to everything he could and make every play. With Correa, it's something of a similar mindset, at least the way he's approaching it right now. He suffered the injury in late May, the plantar fasciitis. It's lingered the entire season. He said it's affecting every aspect of his game, not just offense, which is down. I said defense. He goes, look at my sprint speed. It's the worst of my career. And he was right. It's the worst of his career. His defensive metrics are down a little bit too. He just feels that him being out there, and he has not gone on the injured list the whole time. And by the way, this is the other foot. This is not the foot that was the issue in the offseason when he was a free agent. He just feels that being out there, he can contribute defensively. He can do some things offensively. And right now he is finally starting to come out of it a little bit. On base streak, I don't know if it's still active, but it was 18 straight at one point, maybe 19 straight now. So he feels that was important, that he needed to be there for his team. And yes, if he was a free agent and the numbers were going to be held against him, right, then he might have made some different decisions. Now, it's always interesting, and we had, AJ, you know this, Joe Ryan pitch in this game on Saturday. He had fought through an injury earlier, and to the team's detriment. He didn't tell them soon enough, hey, I've got a problem here, and he got rocked in a period of 7 starts. There's a balance. There is a veteran knowledge that you have over the years, you gain and collect when to go, when not to go. But Correa has just felt that he has to play.
And they're going to use that against Joe Ryan when he gets to arbitration at some point.
Well, the
For
thing
real.
is, no, but what I'm saying is Joe Ryan is he tried to pitch through it, and he had never done that before. And even Rocco talked about it when we talked to him. He said he never complained about it. Like, it wasn't like a thing where he just said, oh, there's a little tightness, but I can pitch through it. And it affected everything. It affected his motion, affected his fastball, because like he really throws a lot of fastballs, and it wasn't the same because he couldn't get the extension he needed and everything. And so, well, they hold it against him only because his numbers went down. They're not going to say, well, he pitched through an injury. They're just going to say, well, his numbers.
No, I'm saying an ARB. That's what they do. I mean, Corbin
well.
Burns last year. Oh, you had one little stretch where you weren't great, for 7 starts. That's why we didn't make the playoffs. I mean, ARB is
the Twins are going to make the playoffs.
Yes, exactly. All right, Ken, good stuff. Great to catch up with you again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ken. And Fair Territory is out there for the world to consume every single Monday, except for next week. If you listen to this episode, programming note, next week is Labor Day, so it will drop on Tuesday. But the Monday episode from this week is out there right now, wherever you get your pods, and also it is up there on YouTube.